President Trump is floating the idea of, quote, taking Cuba as the island's power grid collapses after the U.S. effectively shut off the flow of oil to the country.
Testifying this morning during a subpoena hearing, the head of the U.S. military Southern Command, General Francis Donovan, the leader of the U.S. military's Northern Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command, General Gregory Jones, and acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and America's Security Affairs, Joseph Kudlow. CNN National Security Reporter Haley Britsky is here with us.
Good morning. Mic check. Test 1, 2, 3. It's 10:02 a.m. on Tuesday, March 17th. And we're going to talk about the Bets Off Act. Bets Off.
Cuba, we may or may not see, he floated this idea of taking Cuba. Cuba's electoral grid, as I mentioned, suffered a shooting collapse on Monday. So what more do we know about what that could look like and how it could mirror what happened in Venezuela? Sure, so I think that's one of the main questions. Is it going to look like a very targeted, very quick operation in Venezuela and taking Nicolas Maduro, or is it going to look sort of like the more prolonged operations that we're seeing in Iran that don't necessarily have a clear end goal? Something certainly that General Donovan and General Diaz are going to be asked about this morning, whether or not they're going to be able to get into any specifics. Certainly their job is to provide options to the president for whatever course of action he plans to take. And I'm sure they're going to be threading that needle very carefully.
We'll get a court hearing. We'll have live coverage coming up.
Thank you so much.
Now we're also following additional breaking news this morning. We just learned that the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, has just announced he's resigning. CNN National Security reporter Zachary Cohn is joining us right now. Zachary, what more can you tell us about this dramatic development?
Yeah, well, this appears to be a significant resignation at the senior-most levels of the Trump intelligence community. This is Joe Kent. He was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He posting a hearing post on X, a resignation letter that he submitted, citing misgivings over the Trump administration's decision to launch its war with Iran. Now, Kent, in this letter, writes in part, quote, as a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. Now, Kent,
head of the U.S. Counterterrorism Center announces resignation over the war. So he lost his wife on the last deal with Israel. Good counsel support the ongoing war in Iran.
Just read this letter, very, very strong words.
People getting out of here, man. I'm not going to be responsible for that. Yeah. And he's the one sitting in all the meetings, hearing what's going on. Oh boy, that's not good.
Someone like him would know what the intelligence shows, right? They certainly would have. It goes against the administration's initial argument that Iran posed a threat to the United States and therefore the U.S. had to take immediate action. It's always shocking when a political appointee, particularly like one like him, resigns in such a public way. And so I think you could potentially see more breaking happening within the administration. We already know the MAGA base is very divided about this war in Iran. But specifically someone like him who handles counterterrorism issues, who would know deeply the intelligence that was being provided to the administration at this time, I think his resignation is significant, and it could send more to resign as well.
Check 1, 2, 3. It's 10:06 a.m. on Tuesday, March 17th, and we're talking about the Bets Off Act. Bets off. Check. 1, 2, check. 1.
I believe that he's a war hero. His voice has mattered a great deal, and this is a terrific blow to the Trump administration, again, because of the timing. Because right now, the Iranians are engaged in warfare to share with us, and of course, one of the cards that they hold is the terrorist threat to the United States.
So you agree with him that Iran poses no imminent threat to our nation?
Absolutely, Rich. I believe that they pose no threat, that this is a war of choice, not a war of necessity. And I think that we're going to be doing this we're going to be talking about this for quite a while, because I don't think that this is going very well for the administration for our country.
A number of recent polls have shown that Americans are concerned that the war in Iran could either harm U.S. national security or make the U.S. less safe. What questions and answers are you going to be listening for in your concern?
I want to hear what the impact of this
You know the studios are?
on these combatant command.
Like the house studios? Oh, yes. Sorry. Those are in the basement. If you go back to the elevators over here, and they're in the basement, go toward the Senate trains,
Yeah.
and then you turn right down that hallway that goes up a ramp, and those studios are going to be on the left side, at the top of the ramp.
Resources
So never breaks.
two simultaneous major theater wars. We have since come off that strategy. Now we have one theater war.
S325 or the studio in the basement.
Deny or oppose. That's how we're resourced right now. So we've diminished our capabilities over the last 20 years or so. What is the impact of this war? I submit to you.
Well, and it's kind of a timeline with this idea of taking over Cuba. I mean, if the United States have the resources, look what happened in Venezuela, now the war with Iran, and now this Cuba situation. I think everyone, particularly within the MAGA base, is asking this idea of, is the United States going to be the world's policeman? And that was something that Donald Trump and his Republicans ran against in 2024, that we're not going to get into this idea of endless wars. And so the idea that we're now going to, quote, take over Cuba, I mean, what does that look like? You're going to cut off the head of the regime, but then leave it basically intact, sort of what we've done in Venezuela? I think this president is putting Americans into situations where they're already seeing a loss of life within Iran. But again, why are we entering into these conflicts and not looking for diplomatic solutions? I mean, no one is saying that the Cuban regime is in any way humanitarian or has been looking out for the Cuban people, but there are diplomatic levers that we can pull with Cuba, Iran, in the Middle East, anywhere in the world. And it feels like this president is continuing to rely on the U.S. military to do some of the diplomatic work to lessen the tensions.
You know, it's interesting because Trump used the word takeover of the island, takeover of Cuba. What do you think he's talking about? Really sending in U.S. ground troops to do in Cuba what the U.S. did in Venezuela?
Well, he conducts schizophrenic diplomacy virtually every day, and he might very well change his mind tomorrow. I would submit to you he's probably looking at some kind of a Maduro takedown. But, I mean, what we're seeing, unfortunately, in real time is a degradation to American prestige and influence. It's happening every day. You look at Europe, they're not supporting this war. Why? Because we didn't come and talk to them about it beforehand. We did not build a coalition like we did in Iraq. I served proudly with 32 other nations when I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, I mean, it's very confusing with what Mr. Trump is saying about Cuba. And I think our nations, our allies are looking at this and saying, you know, maybe the Americans aren't a reliable partner like they've been in the past. And maybe it's time to start looking at doing more for ourselves and less reliance on the Americans.
I just want to follow up, General, with what you said earlier about the concern of the threat to the United States with the war with Iran. There has been a lot of discussion about potential Iran proxies, sleeper cells in the United States, but we're several weeks into this war, and you haven't necessarily seen anything activated. There's been talk about it, and there have been previous strikes against Iran where you didn't see that either. What do you make of that?
I think that they are hunkering down and they're waiting us out. They know that they can continue to apply pressure.
Oh, you got a presser in here too? Oh shit, what time's the presser?
10:30.
Ain't nobody gonna cover it. Everybody's doing shit, man. You might be the only one here.
I'm just doing a live stream.
Oh, and welcome to my humble abode. This is my house right here, man.
You're
Regardless of what's going on, it's my lunchtime, I eat my lunch here, because they have a presser.
Well, no official
Bruh.
house yet, and
Oh, man.
officials are still
Seniors
digesting.
until official designs of war.
A letter that Joe
There
Kent
you go.
has sent
Now the truth's
to the
coming out,
president.
man.
And
All
so,
these motherfuckers
you know, when
gonna
you
be
look
like,
at
yeah,
Joe
bruh.
Kent's biography, I
He
think
gonna
it
be
will
in
be a
jail.
little bit difficult for
Senior
some
intel
officials
official
to sort of
resigned.
dismiss this
Wow.
right as someone who has
Yeah, they'll say it's,
opposed
fake
to
news.
President
Fake
Trump,
news.
the way they do
Fake
so
news.
many other lines of criticism. You know, this is someone who, one, was appointed by the president himself, but two, has aligned himself
But that's the
with
thing.
so many of the
I was even
president's
one
decisions.
thing.
You know, he has
But I was
said,
like,
for example, that the
I didn't
2020
even pay
election was
attention.
stolen from
I was thinking that, bro. I really was. Because I was like,
FBI was involved.
right, because you don't have to be back until like noon. But I didn't know all of that, right? I didn't know all of that until like
Outspoken against
late in the game.
President
So
Trump
I could have
by
said,
any means.
yeah, I can cover this 10.
And
Because it's cool.
Washington State twice. You know, this is
I
someone
mean,
who served
you know, and free Rudy up to do.
as a Green Beret in the Army. So I think
They already
when
gone.
we do
Matter of fact, I was,
see exactly how they characterize this response.
Are you doing the?
oh, you got two here. Hey, fellas, love you, Green. Green all over in the studio, but they were saying Esther's phone.
Yeah.
There were two different places.
Gabbard, response to all this. This does, I think, put her in a predicament. She is someone who also spoke out
Who's
against
the,
the forever wars, talked
Chris
about,
Murphy
you know, the
and
of previous
House
iteration of the
I like
Republican
Chris
Party,
too.
exactly the sort of thing that Joe Kent
I don't think they're in the parliament
that
stuff.
in this letter that the president has sort of
Yeah, yeah.
to attack him. And so this could
Probably
put
like
her in a very
how she
difficult
betting on the war.
position as well. One thing that I think is
MAGA, MAGA, my man.
always
over there,
never
betting
looked
on
particularly kindly
Iran strikes.
people who resign and
That's
sort
what
of
you
go
did.
out.
That's quick. That was quick.
Probably rub many White House officials the wrong way. Now, we will see the president in about 45 minutes. He'll be hosting the Taoiseach of Ireland for St. Patrick's Day.
It's a nice backlight. The sun, the natural backlight. That's pretty cool. This time of year.
We had a nice natural backlight through a fountain.
Or the Thursday night when we were in New
I
York.
love live coverage of that meeting once the Taoiseach arrives at the White House. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kevin. We'll be right back as we continue to monitor this hearing on Capitol Hill with top military leaders. Stay with us. I'm Bailey Collins at the White House, and this is CNN.
Well, Mom, the only thing I could think about was getting back to playing. Bruce gave me the earwig back on the stage. The music is life. A real comeback deserves a real boost.
Running a successful delivery company has taught me something. You're only as good as your team. We have AT&T Business, and that's why we're the best. You're aware there's nothing here. You guys are early. I like that. You should see what you're wearing. You guys Thursday, I just made some lemonade. Really warm in here. Like a bit warm. You know, my phone still works down here. It's crazy.
Why'd I go to the doctor? When my heart kept skipping a beat, I didn't think much of it. But my girls made me get checked out, and it made such a difference. Turns out, I have AFib, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times. Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain.
What's going on, guys?
Fatigue, or lightheadedness.
What's
Chris Murphy.
You notice one or more of these symptoms. Contact the
what time is it?
I'm so glad I did. And my girls
Good to
are
know.
This is no sign of it.
Whose CBS's poll? Or it should be. Let me go find out, double check this. Thanks, guys.
Our brains are incredible, but memory can be complicated. That's why we created Nariva Memory 3D. It supports your short-term, long-term, and working memory. Take it from me. An element never forgets. Remember Nariva.
For those of you just joining us, let's take a closer look at this guy getting leveled. This driver gets handed an expensive repair bill. Look at that pain. Yeah, it's real. With that, let's send it to the action with Real Boots.
Thanks, Drew. I'm here with head mechanic Kevin. Kevin, can you tell us what happened here today?
The customer came in with what they thought was a simple repair, and ended up being a polished beer pump.
What a shame. I
Shield could save big.
See, folks, that's why you have to make that call to CarShield before a breakdown. Drew?
That's right, Brittany. Now let's hear from more customers on why they chose CarShield.
CarShield saved my family almost $1,700. It's the very first visit.
I've been a customer for 5 years. I've saved $2,200.
And I saved over $50,000.
Not only can you save big money on repairs, but you'll get a price lock guarantee. Your price will never go up for as long as you cover your car. Plus, 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing and rental car options. Let's drive right into the action.
Drew, the review is in. We're about to hear the ruling of whether this customer will have to pay the bill. I'm confident the call will be overturned because the customer has CarShield. They cover up to 5,000 parts and systems like engines, transmissions, and more. What was that? There you have it. The ruling on the field. Covered.
It's as easy as call, drive, save. And now, a word from our sponsor. If you had to pay thousands for a car repair right now, could you afford it? With CarShield, you just pay a low monthly fee and your covered repairs get paid. It's simple. With CarShield, drivers who call before a breakdown can avoid paying for expensive repairs.
That's right, Drew. CarShield has affordable month-to-month plans for every budget. I feel like those people at the restaurant need to know about it too. Let's go.
Good show, everybody. CarShield saved drivers more than $1 billion in car repair. Call to get your free quote and lock in your rate now. Call 800-428-0671. 800-428-0671.
Stuffed up again?
So congested.
You need Sinex saline from Vicks.
Just Sinex? Breathe. What is wow? Sinex? Breathe.
Try this off for you guys.
You don't know just how dangerous it is. If you're never gonna work, figuring out what's to do.
Yeah, but I made it. How are you doing?
Okay, I literally, I feel like I got frostbite on my hand yesterday in a t-shirt.
Were you home yesterday?
No, we were in.
You were in,
Yeah.
okay. Were you okay getting back home? Oh,
Yeah, I know, it was hospitalized.
it was just like way later in the day and then like very early in the day. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Really. But it was
everybody.
Hide this down here.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get between you and your.
Yeah, no. Not much, all right. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Glad to be joined by my friend, Representative Greg Casar from the House of Representatives. We are introducing legislation today entitled Banning Event Training on Sensitive Operations and Federal Functions, the Bets Off Act. This is long overdue legislation which would prohibit these prediction markets like Kalshi and Polymarket from offering markets to allow people to bet on government action and on markets where there is one individual that controls the outcome of the bet. These are fundamentally corrupt markets. They are rife with insider trading, and they offer incredibly perverse incentives, especially inside government, for government actors to push official decision-making towards their financial interests. I want to give you maybe the most stark example of why this legislation is necessary. Right before the U.S. attacks on Iran, there was a flurry of activity on Polymarket. In fact, the day before the strikes began, there was a series of very specific bets that were made. These bets guessed, put money down on the United States attacking Iran the following day. Now, this was not a frequent bet that was made on Polymarket. It was, in fact, a very exceptional day where there were many bets made on this specific prediction that U.S. military action against Iran would occur the next day. Those bets paid off to the tune of over $100,000 at a minimum for each of the individuals who placed those bets. Most of those accounts were set up on the day that they made those bets. It seems pretty clear what happened. People inside the White House or very close to the White House with knowledge of the attack that was imminent cashed in. That is fundamentally corrupt, and it is frankly stunning to people that it is legal, that it is allowed for these prediction markets to allow for bets to be made on such consequential questions like war and peace. And so our legislation is pretty simple. It simply says that these markets cannot allow people to make bets on government decision-making and, frankly, on other instances where there is one single individual who controls and knows the outcome of a market. I'll give you another example, much more benign, but still fundamentally corrupt. You can place bets today based upon what words a particular politician or celebrity will say in public remarks. Well, of course, there's one person who knows the answer to that question, the person making the speech. And there's a series of people around that individual who know the answer as well. So when people know how a bet is going to play out, it's an easy opportunity for them to make money. But these markets make it seem as if these predictions are on the level. They are not. And so gullible consumers get conned into placing bets on markets where the outcome is knowable, where they are essentially bound to lose. So I'm glad that we are able to come together, House and the Senate, and introduce this legislation. I think it's long overdue and urgent. Urgent because these markets are exploding. Urgent because the Trump administration is clearly making money off of these markets. Urgent because the harm isn't just to consumers, it's to every single citizen. Because think about what's happening inside the Situation Room. There are likely people who have placed bets on whether the United States is going to take a particular military action overseas. And they are, inside Trump's White House, giving advice to the president, not based on what's best for national security, but based upon what will make them money. That's unforgivable. And it's why we need to pass this legislation now. Finally, before I turn it over to Greg, let me just sort of step back for a second, and ask a question. What happens to us spiritually when every moral question in this country just becomes a market? Right? Don't we lose something? Don't we rot a little bit inside when the question of famine in Gaza isn't a question of what's right and what's wrong, but whether you can make money or lose money? I think it's really important that there are certain matters that are not monetized by prediction markets, whether that be humanitarian disaster overseas or the fundamental moral question of whether we go to war or not. Those heavy, weighty public policy questions, steeped in questions of morality, become empty and corrupted if they just become a money-making opportunity for people. So I'm glad to be here introducing this legislation. I hope that there'll be bipartisan support. Obviously, there's a flurry of these bills being introduced right now because the activity is ramped up so quickly. But in talking to my Republican colleagues, many of them see the grave danger here as well. And while they might be a little bit slower to introduce these bills, I do think there's an opportunity for us to be able to work together here. At least I hope so. So let me turn it over to Greg.
Thank you, Chris. I really want to thank Senator Murphy for his really important leadership on an issue that becomes more urgent by the day. Right now, America is facing a corruption crisis. After promising to drain the swamp, Donald Trump has ushered in the most corrupt administration in American history. And across the political spectrum, Americans are fed up with a government that over and over and over again answers to the wealthy and well-connected instead of ordinary people. This bill is about cracking down on one of the most dangerous new venues for government corruption, and that's in prediction markets. On the day before the Iran war, 150 accounts placed highly unusual bets on Polymarket that the war would start the next day. 109 of those accounts made over $10,000 betting on the war. 16 made over $100,000, and one person made nearly $500,000. $500,000 from betting on the start of a war that has cost billions of taxpayer dollars, over a dozen lives of U.S. service members, and countless more civilians. While working class kids were getting sent to fight and die in the Middle East, others were cashing in, and they either got very lucky or they were privy to very secret inside information. I expect most Americans don't need a list of the reasons why this is wrong and dangerous, but let me give you just a few. We shouldn't live in a country where someone sitting in the Situation Room making decisions about whether to invade or to bomb, decisions about war and peace, life and death, that those decisions could be driven by the fact that they have hundreds of thousands of dollars riding on the decision. We shouldn't live in a country where government officials or well-connected people can make money off of secret information that is supposed to be used in the public interest. And we shouldn't live in a country where a foreign power can guess what Donald Trump is going to do next by going to a betting market. While we don't know the names of the people who, with insider information, correctly bet on the Iran war, we do know that, like with basically every other corruption story in Washington, D.C., that the Trump family is getting a cut. Donald Trump Jr. is an investor in Polymarket, a paid advisor to Kalshi, and he's starting to work on Truth Predict, the Trump's very own corruption machine in prediction markets. Needless to say, I don't think this administration is going to be cracking down on this form of corruption anytime soon, since they're cashing in on it. The potential for corruption in these markets goes well beyond wars, and so does our bill. No one would join a poker game where one player gets to know what's in every other player's hand. No one would sit at a craps table where one player gets to pick how the dice land. But that's how many prediction markets today work. From the Super Bowl halftime show to the length of a White House press conference, people are allowed to bet on events where someone knows and already controls the outcome. And when that happens, these markets become just another avenue for the powerful and well-connected to screw over everyone else. If you bet on who's performing at the Super Bowl halftime show and lose your money to someone who controlled the answer, you're getting ripped off. And the people at the very top are making money off of it. And that's wrong. The CEOs of this company have made clear that they want to go even further, to an America where the entire country is a casino and the rich and the powerful always win. Congress must act before we get there. I want to thank Senator Murphy again for his great leadership on this issue, and my House colleagues who are helping co-lead the bill with me, Gabe Amo and Yasmin Ansari. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to you, Chris, or to y'all for questions.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's pretty well documented what online gambling is doing to Americans' wallets, especially young men. So why limit this to corruption or manipulation? Why not just ban it outright?
So there are a number of different pieces of legislation that are being introduced as we speak. I hope that we will take a comprehensive look at the way that prediction markets are rigging our entire economy and government action. So I know there's legislation that will be introduced to restrict prediction markets in sports betting. Senator Merkley has legislation that would restrict the way that prediction markets can offer bets on elections. So I think there'll be a suite of pieces of legislation that will allow us to take a more comprehensive look. For my part, this bill doesn't cover the waterfront in terms of what is concerning in these markets, but this seems to be the most urgent problem right now because there is such obvious deep corruption happening inside this White House. And as Greg pointed out, this White House and the friends and family of the president are clearly making a mint off of these corrupt prediction markets.
Yeah, we can debate at length how we handle prediction markets generally, but at a minimum, shouldn't we be able to agree that somebody shouldn't be able to place 17 bets on the halftime show and win all of them? I mean, to me, that seems like a place where Democrats, Republicans, everybody can come together and say, that's nuts. So we should, at a minimum, be able to pass my bill here with Senator Murphy.
Setting aside the government actions portion of this, I mean, as you both know, that this would also ban betting on things like the Oscars, Super Bowl halftime show. Obviously, there are insider trading risks there that you spoke about, but also, I mean, these sorts of things are growing very much in popularity. A lot of Americans like placing these bets. I'm just curious if you wonder, or are you worried at all about ending up on the wrong side of public opinion by going after those things?
Well, you know, I'll let you say a version of what we were talking about in the other room. I do think there's an assumption from the public that these markets are not rigged. I mean, wouldn't the government protect consumers from markets that were transparently rigged? And to another point that Greg has made, the people who benefit in these markets are always the powerful. I mean, let's be honest. The people who know who's going to perform at the Super Bowl, the people who know what words the president is going to use in a speech are very powerful people. These prediction markets aren't offering bets on what your neighbor is going to have for breakfast tomorrow morning. It's not regular people who have the inside information. It's the rich and connected and powerful that have the inside information. So yes, I think there's a good question as to why do so many people end up placing bets on markets that clearly are rigged? And there's probably complicated answers to that question. But one of them is probably that people might not know that they're being offered bets on markets that clearly have inside information.
Yeah, to this point, I think we should have the ability for folks to go to a casino and play a poker game or play a game of roulette. But we have rules that say the House cannot rig the poker game. So when people get on their phone and see these prediction markets, they expect that there are rules to make sure the game isn't rigged against them. And so I think that voters would clearly stand with us saying, we want to make sure that you aren't betting on a rigged poker game.
You had mentioned there's a flurry of bills already on this, so I just wanted to clarify that this is more so on stipulating what kinds of bets and trades there are and not on the regulatory side of it, because I think Senator Blumenthal has a bill on wanting to go back to states and not just being housed completely federally with the CFTC, so just wanted to clarify the difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of ways that you could approach this question. Obviously, you could put, and we should put, penalties on individuals who work for the government who are placing bets on these markets with inside information. But this legislation is simpler and broader in that it just simply says these markets should not exist in cases where the market is clearly rigged because there's an individual inside government who knows and controls the outcome, or there's a private individual who knows and controls the outcome. And listen, I mean, there will still be an infinite number of places where people can make bets. What we're saying is that when the market is inherently and almost certainly rigged, that should be a place where people are protected from what is, pretty regularly outright fraud.
This is for either of you, but you mentioned this earlier, Representative Casar, about this is an issue that both sides can get behind. But it seems that this bill and all the other bills proposed on prediction markets have been led by Democrats. Have you reached out to your Republican colleagues on this? And if so, do they seem amenable to working with you on this?
Listen, I think that this is a really hard issue for Republicans right now because their cult leader is cashing in off these prediction markets. I just want to be honest. I mean, right now, there's not a lot of evidence that Republicans are willing to stand up to President Trump when he's making money corruptly. I mean, obviously, this is just one of many ways in which every single day the president is cashing in on his position. Republicans weren't willing to stand up and say the gift of a luxury plane by a foreign government was wrong. Republicans weren't willing to stand up and say the offering of a meme coin so as to facilitate secret payoffs to the president was wrong. They haven't been willing to say that the kids sitting on all sorts of corporate boards that are surprisingly getting massive new government contracts is wrong. And they probably won't say that the people surrounding the president making money off of decisions of war and peace is wrong. But, our hope is that Donald Trump won't control that party forever. Maybe we'll be able to make a breakthrough in the short run, but I do think in my private conversations with Republicans, they recognize that these markets are inherently corrupt. And let's start having the conversation now so that eventually, under the right circumstances, we might be able to protect people.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, I just wanted to comment on the Trump family's other side deals since the start of the war. The Trump brothers going to the drone business, Jared Kushner soliciting investments from Gulf leaders while negotiating peace. The opportunity for profiteering. This bill has been.
I mean, this is the most corrupt administration in American history, and they find even, wars where kids are dying as an opportunity to make a profit. Trump said right at the beginning of this war that oil prices going up would be a, quote, small price to pay. Well, for Trump, everything's a small price to pay because he never pays it. It's not his kids that are getting shipped off to the Middle East. His kids are too busy cashing in. It's not his budget that's getting stretched thin by surging gas prices. It's millions of Americans. And while we're being told that there's not enough money for people to have health care, he's spending billions of dollars on this regime change war in the Middle East. And it sounds like he and his kids are finding even more ways to have some of those billions of dollars for themselves.
Yeah, his chief economic advisor said today that consumers are the last thing they think about when it comes to this war. The first thing they think about is cashing in, right? This is a White House that is a 24/7 cash grab, right? They have decided that they are going to spend most of their days operationalizing the White House to make money, and they will use any opportunity, any mechanism available to them to make that money, including sending our young men and women overseas to die in war. It's pretty disgusting. And I just, hope that this country doesn't become normalized to it. Again, these charts are pretty stunning. I mean, the idea that there are likely dozens of people sitting in the White House as we speak, listening for inside information and then going onto their phones and placing bets, or even worse, placing bets and then trying to manipulate outcomes to make themselves money is unprecedented. And though we don't know who these people are, it's just patently clear, given the way that these bets were placed and other bets have been placed, another example being the lead up to the war in Venezuela, that there's a lot of people inside that White House that are using these prediction markets to enrich themselves corruptly. And of course they are, because the tone is set from the top. When the president is using his office every single day to cash in, then he is clearly sending a signal to everybody who works at the White House that they should also use their time close to power in order to cash in for themselves.
It's a ban on non-financial government actions. And you have some language in here where, if the underlying characteristic of the action is not financial, commercial, or economic. I guess, could you speak a little bit to the carve out there with financial?
Yeah, so, there are legitimate markets that have existed for a long time in which individuals are essentially placing bets on government action. For instance, bets, trades made based upon which way you believe the Federal Reserve will move interest rates. So we do try to carve out protection for existing mainstream financial markets under this bill. What we're really trying to get at are these new prediction markets based on non-financial decisions made by the federal government. So, all right, great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.